Because the goal is not to completely subjugate Afghanistan. The goal is to use Afghanistan to wash money out of the tax bases of the United States, out of the tax bases of European countries, through Afghanistan and back into the hands of a transnational security elite. That is the goal, i.e. the goal is to have an endless war, not a successful war.
Wonky start here. Make sure I've got everyone up. Okay.
Yeah, it looked like we lost a few people.
Yeah, I was trying to make sure everyone could see. Here we go. Here's Mike.
Okay, great.
Okay, I think we got everybody now. Okay, so I think everyone probably knows that clip. If you could hear it okay, see it okay, that's Assange speaking about the Afghanistan war and basically how it's used to wash money. So I'm going to go into this next clip now, and this is no me endorsing any particular show or anything. I just think it's a great clip of someone in Congress that's pretty libertarian, I would say, speaking on FARA and AIPAC and all of that. So here we go.
AIPAC is the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. I'm not against Israel. I've never voted to sanction Israel. I've never said anything particularly, critical of Israel, other than, for instance, right now they're bombing. They've killed 1% of the civilian population in Gaza. That's concerning to me. I vote my conscience. I'm a libertarian-leaning Republican. I don't vote for foreign aid for anybody. I don't vote for wars anywhere. I'm for free speech. This election cycle, they spent $400,000 against me. If one person starts speaking the truth, they're afraid it could be contagious.
The Biden administration has put a bunch of people in jail for violating something called FARA, the Foreign Agent Registration Act. It's been on the books for 90 years. And it's never been enforced ever until recently, until really the Trump era and Biden era. But the law requires people who lobby on behalf of foreign governments to register. It's that simple. And this is the largest lobby in the most effective lobby in the United States on behalf of a foreign government. Are they registered with FARA?
They are not, but they should be. They would say, we are Americans. The members of AIPAC are Americans, and that they have the right to free speech. FARA applies not to foreigners, to foreign agents, right? Of foreign principles, agents of foreign principles.
It's Americans lobbying on behalf of foreign governments.
Correct. So AIPAC is exactly what FARA is meant for. Now they would say, and we have a First Amendment right. Okay, well, I agree with you there, but we also have election laws and it's disclosure. They should be registered with FARA. This is what FARA is where there's gray area, where it's an American representing a foreign country. Yes. Let's look and see if you're getting any money from that foreign country. Are you a dual citizen with that foreign country? Are you being directed by, for instance, is Netanyahu speaking to your group, advising you on your next move? Are you getting money from the military industrial complex? To understand AIPAC, I think it's easiest to model them as a military industrial lobby. Their biggest thing is they want more equipment, more military equipment from the United States going to Israel. In fact, when they used to be allowed in my office, the argument they would make is, oh, we're just stimulating the U.S. military industrial complex because every single penny of the $3.8 billion that they nominally get, now they're getting way more than that, but that Israel nominally gets goes to U.S. military contractors. Ostensibly, it's a group of Americans who lobby on behalf of Israel. They're for anything Israel.
Okay.
Right.
I wonder if the same group of people calling AIPAC free speech would call boycott, divestment, sanctions free speech.
I
And that's
say,
really what I'm doing here, just to set up. I've got one more clip. Is we talk a lot about the sort of the hypocrisy and the one-way street when it comes to freedom of speech and also transparency with us as citizens and the government. And it's just shocking to me that we've learned a lot more recently about exactly how much money AIPAC is putting into our elections, and that is influencing our elections, is it not? But as I said in the email to all of you, there's a case. They start trial September 3rd, and this is the Uhuru movement, and they've been indicted. I'll pull up the actual indictment in a minute, but this is a clip from a show, Do Dissidents. If you're not familiar, they're really great. So this is the Uhuru's lawyer just telling a little small bit about the case.
You know, as you say, this group has been around since the 70s. They are, you know, left black radicals, I guess you could say. Penny can describe it better, but the charges are, it's an obscure charge that they are secret Russian agents operating in the US. Now, they've been around since the 70s. Their positions have not changed. They're anti-colonialists, they're leftists, they're anti-war. They've always been an international organization. It's in their platform. They seek international allies. Penny, again, can tell you better than me. They've been to many countries and allied with foreign nationals in Ireland, all over Africa, in Spain, and in Russia. And this wasn't a problem until the spring of 2022, when they were speaking out against the support for fueling the war in Ukraine. They were contradicting the narrative, the official narrative, that this was an unprovoked invasion. And O'Malley was giving speeches saying, you know, that this was provoked, that NATO, and these are speeches that he'd been giving for decades about NATO expansion. They had been criticized the coup in 2014 at the time in Ukraine, where they replaced a Russia-friendly president with a NATO-friendly president, and the arming of Ukraine and the dangerous provocation. So they've been out there doing that. It wasn't a problem until the spring of 2022, after Russia invaded Ukraine. And then it was a problem. And then in July, Penny, again, can just tell you what happened, but they were raided by FBI SWAT teams. Their homes, their offices, all their files were seized. And it was a quite violent raid. So that's basically where we're at.
So, yeah, it seems that if it's Israel, it's fine to speak on behalf of them, to accept money, and for them to influence our elections. But our freedom of speech, I mean, it's just preposterous. So I'll pull up this indictment, but please, I'd love anyone who wants to jump in. Go ahead.
Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to start, because that really makes me angry when, as Thomas Massey said, that AIPAC and other lobbyists and even members of Congress use the rationalization that, yes, this money goes to Israel, or it goes to Ukraine, or it goes wherever, but it comes back and benefits our own economy. First of all, that's super corrupt. But second of all, that money comes back washed in the blood of innocent people in Palestine, Gaza, Israel, Ukraine, Russia, so many places around the world. It's not clean money. That's the nastiest thing and the most disheartening thing that I can think for an elected representative to say, and for people to listen to and agree with. Julian says it very eloquently in the first clip, obviously, but that mindset is just sick. It's sick.
And that's Phil Anderson running for Senate up in Wisconsin. So please, when you introduce yourself, let us know who you are, where you're from.
All right. Good point, Matt. Phil Anderson,
Phil,
United
for
States
people
Senate
who've been
candidate,
loyal
Wisconsin.
followers, what, like episode 19 or 20?
19.
Now? 19, yeah. Phil's been on with us a number of times, so I think he, for loyal followers, he's
I broke protocol. Matt's yanking my leash.
But yeah, no, these thoughts on what Kelly was expressing there, and we saw in the last couple of days two big stories. And again, regardless of what you think of these people, Scott Ritter's home being raided by the FBI yesterday for supposed violations of the Foreign Agent Registration Act, and a big story by Matt Taibbi today, following up on whistleblowers coming out of the Air Marshal Service about the Quiet Skies program and how it was used on Tulsi Gabbard. And not just, it's a really interesting article because it goes to show just how pervasive this assault on the First Amendment can combine with the assault on the Fourth Amendment in terms of surveillance. But anyway, yeah, folks, please jump in your thoughts on all of this.
Well, maybe we should start. We'll do introductions of the three that haven't joined us before. Desiree, do you want to go first?
Hello, my name is Desiree Chantal Tolliver. I was running for Congressional District 10 in Washington State. I did not make it into the primaries. Washington State is a two-party primary. I'm not quite sure what I will be doing from here, but I still do stand with the uncommitted movement of Washington, people involved. I still stand with the members of PASS and everyone else who's endorsed me and who voted for me and donated to me. And I meant what I said about the solutions. So considering that, I'm still here, just the opportunity to still talk about the things that are relevant in our region.
Yeah, I'm so glad you both joined. We also have John here. Maybe we'll let you go if that's okay. John's also in Washington. I'm so glad you guys both came. I'm sorry I didn't find you before your primary, but I was looking at your numbers and I think it's actually really encouraging because both of you, I think it was around 4,000 votes, around 3%. But I mean, when you see it said very low voter turnout this time. And I really feel very strongly that candidates like you are the people that don't vote normally would actually vote for, the people that are apathetic. So I think that's very hopeful, but please go ahead, John.
Yeah, hi, my name's John Sully Roman. I ran for Washington State's 3rd Congressional District as an independent. And, I was a Democrat my entire life until years ago. It started just getting out of hand. I was like, man, I don't identify with any of this stuff. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Like Desiree said, it's a top 2 primary. And, traveling throughout the district and speaking with a number of people all throughout the district, I can't count how many people, both Democrats and Republicans, my message was resonating with. And my message was just the truth of the different, things that we're talking about throughout this election cycle, and just being honest with the American people and not, trying to politicize and blow up things. And the biggest thing that, is preventing something like what we're all trying to accomplish here is the fear of the alternative and the dedication to the political party, because people aren't voting for their values. They vote for according to their party line or for fear of what the alternative is. And so until we can overcome that, I mean, we got a lot of work to do.
We do. But
that's
okay.
it in a nutshell. I don't know. I don't really have anything scripted or anything to say. Matt Ho, I'm a huge fan of yours as well. And to everybody else who's out here that's running, I've never done anything like this in my life. I never thought I would be introducing myself as somebody running for U.S. Congress. But the way things are going, it just is just like it's out of hand. It is beyond even anything I ever thought imaginable. And, we've got a lot of work to do. And the only way that's going to be done is by regular, everyday people rising up and trying to get the message out there, So we'll see what happens. I didn't obviously win, it's between, but this district is a pretty red district, and the Democrat was able to, Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez was able to win a long-held Republican seat, and now it's between her and Joe Kent. He's a, pretty hard. He's got some pretty hardcore views. Really resonates with a certain, group of people, and I don't know. I'm beyond, another thing is like I came to this point where I was able to kind of step back and put everything to the side. As much as I dislike so many things that people say on either side, I just was able to kind of distance myself from all of that and just like remove myself. And I think if we can encourage people to do that all across this country, which is going to be difficult, and just see it for what it is, we'll have a groundswell of support for what we're trying to accomplish. So anyway, I'll mute my mic.
I agree.
Well, yeah, but hey, before we move on to Doug, Desiree and John, in both your primaries, were the top two winners the two people with the most money?
So for mine, it's kind of interesting. So Marilyn Strickland, of course, but aside from having the most money, Marilyn Strickland is also, she said on her website, the co-chair for the elections for the Democrats, for getting Democrats elected as well as reelected. And, you know, she also, all the stuff with AIPAC. But yeah, she is the number one. But Don Hewitt has like 3 committees open. They claim to only have raised like $39.57, but he had signs everywhere, and he did get second. And then Nirav Sheth got third, and I believe Nirav Sheth said he raised $26,000. So Nirav's numbers do make more sense than Don's do,
Yeah.
but yeah, supposedly Don spent no money.
Yeah, that would be a historic occasion if that was actually the truth. So, yeah, and John, in your case, same with the money.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so Marie Gluesenkamp Perez, I think the last FEC filing was over 7 million, and you know she's on the take with AIPAC. Whoever wins, AIPAC's got their guy. You know, whether it's Joe Kent or Marie Gluesenkamp Perez. When they win, they're going to be gladly both accepting those contributions. And then I think, I can't remember exactly. I think Joe Kent was around 4 million. So.
Wow. Okay. In-house primary races, that much money. It's it's staggering. Yeah. But okay. Yeah. All right. Hey, Doug, you go, please.
Sure. Hey, Matt. Nice to meet you, Kelly. Nice to meet you also, and good to hear from you, Desiree and John. John, right on. Just want to echo what you were saying. I'm Douglas P. Marsh, running for United States Senate in Michigan on the Green Party ticket, on the same philosophy, just that more normal people should be engaging with politics and trying to occupy seats of power. Although I have to say, I found myself running for the United States Senate sort of by coincidence. The sitting Senator Debbie Stabenow announced that she wouldn't run for re-election, and the party asked for volunteers to run, and I said I would. And it's carried through, and I'm running a campaign and being serious about that. But I also stick close to the ideal that kind of going to work every day is maybe our most potent political activity as working class people. I'm a community journalist, so I go to work every day and write for small newspapers in kind of middle, lower peninsula of Michigan. And I do keep up with these issues that we're discussing to the best of my ability, but I also try to stay very grounded in the community where I'm living. I go to work, I touch grass and try to do most of my more potent political organizing right where I am.
Okay.
Right. And I think I know this particular story. Here's another one of, crackdown on freedom of the press. And I know, I think you had already heard of this, maybe, Doug, this story.
Yeah, I followed that very closely when it was first breaking, I think a year and a half ago about. And I was very alarmed that a community newspaper, not unlike the one where I was working, was raided by the county sheriff and I think the local PD on pretty spurious grounds, like a really flimsy ad hoc kind of investigation that was pretty obviously retaliatory. And they were raided, and the publisher's home was raided, and his 98-year-old mother was kind of traumatized in the raid and died the next day. And I guess the most recent action on the case is that an investigation came back with very little blame laid on the police, kind of the rank and file. It absolved them of blame, I think, in a way, and said they were just kind of following orders and carrying out an investigation. And they're going to charge the police chief, I think the article said, with kind of obstruction of justice, kind of an after the fact obstructing the investigation of conduct rather than assigning criminal conduct to the raid itself.
Right.
If I
And do you
understood
remember
the coverage correctly.
the details were that they obtained someone's, like, was it their license information or something? It's all here.
Yeah, there was somebody's driving record. I think it was a local business owner, and it was their driving. Oh, it was a local business owner who wanted a liquor license for their establishment, but they had lost their license, drunk driving, and were operating their vehicle without a license. And the newspaper was kind of reporting on it. And I think the business owner and the local law enforcement sort of colluded to retaliate against the newspaper.
It's just, I don't know. It's just terrifying. And I think sometimes that there's so much coming at us every day from so many different places. It's hard to, like, keep up with all these stories, but it does seem like there are just more and more of them. And yeah, the raid on
and you really just have to watch right in your own backyard to make sure that there's room for journalism and for watchdogs and whistleblowers and people who are trying to shine lights on even just your local officials down to your township and county level. It can get very granular and it can get low level corruption, but it can still be corruption right in your backyard.
Right. Okay.
We have
Joe?
right down here in Wake Forest, we've got something where the local chamber of commerce corruption, but the local newspaper has been bullied into silence. Something going on here. But anyway, yeah, we haven't heard from Joe or Mike yet. So,
Joe, you want to?
Well, thanks, and I remind all you candidates that you did not lose your election. As I mentioned the last time I was on here, with Matt being a winner, we all win by running because we are taking on the establishment. So I'm on the ballot again here in South Carolina for Congress against a 32-year incumbent who does nothing but toe the line for their big party. And one article you might want to look up today, Kelly, is one that John Whitehead, who's based in Charlottesville, Virginia. I knew him when I lived there. American theocracy. Politics has become our national religion. So, yeah, it comes at us from all these different directions. And he really comes out with some good points. Like the courts, for instance, have become courts of order, at just basically advocating for government interests, rather than championing the rights of the citizens, which was what the Constitution was originally intended for. So look that article up. I mean, the whole premise of, the church leaning on the ballot box as a way to, put a referendum out there on morality. Well, that's just empowering tyrants. That's all they're doing. They're laying the groundwork for totalitarianism. And we see it every day. I mean, that is...
terrible news to hear Ritter raided, and that's probably not the first time that they took a shot at him. So
No, definitely.
all you guys are needed to keep up the good work, amazing work you're doing. And thank you for doing it.
You too, Joe. Okay, Mike.
Yeah, I feel like just another little guy, you know. I don't have a big money machine, and I don't want to play politics. I want to talk about governance. So it's really me introducing myself to people. I'm not going to kiss babies. I'm not going to put up signs. I'm going to do it the right way instead of their way. And who knows? I may turn a corner. Last time, as I shared in this audience, I did get 30.7% to a incumbent. So somehow my message got out there, and I just need to be bold and tell more people about me. And my message is so much better and so much less stale than what's out there. So just keep preaching the truth, y'all, because there's going to be a day of reckoning when the truth prevails.
Well, I know you're not on Twitter X, Mike, but I included in a clip, a post, a screenshot of how that you got the 30.7%. And that is a big deal. I think, it is certainly a big battle, but I wanted this, bear with me a minute. I couldn't, I really want to share just a little bit of this, but I couldn't get a clip because Twitter seems to be blocking all kinds of things I used to be able to just grab. But I want to play just a little snippet. And this is the chairman, Yeshatella of the Uhuru group. And I'm just going to play I don't know, less than a minute, but they go to trial on the 3rd of September. And I know the Green Party has brought a lot of attention to this, but it's really just terrifying when you hear what he says. They could be facing prison. And not just him, also the woman that you saw on the due dissidence clip as well. So let me see if I can do this without too much. Okay, hold on. I think we got it. Being wonky. Okay, hold on. Here it comes. All right. So, just a sec. Okay, here we go.
With the release of Julian Assange, who had been locked up for something like 5 years in a prison in the United Kingdom, and prior to that had been more or less under house arrest at the Ecuadorian embassy in England. We think it's extremely important that he has been freed. As you know, I, along with 2 other members of our movement and party, have been indicted. And on September 3rd, we'll be going to prison, going to trial, and possibly to prison for 15 years. And this is based on issues of free speech, similar to what has happened with Assange. And that's obviously one of the reasons we will be extremely concerned about the freedom of Assange. This question of free speech is something that's roiling the waters throughout this country and throughout much of the world, where the colonial colonizers continue to dominate. So I just wanted to say some things about that.
So anyway, I encourage you, go on Twitter. It's Omali Yeshatella, or you can look up the Uhuru movement. But I think, it's interesting. We have to stick to the point that it doesn't matter whether you agree with some of what people are saying. I mean, even Tucker Carlson did a piece on the Uhuru movement and what had happened. This is about freedom of speech. And I think one thing that has just stunned me for years, and I know we have one person who ran as a Democrat here, and that's no, criticism of you. But, I've been kind of surprised to see it's like the Democrats are sort of out of this fear of Trump, ushering in all of these restrictions, all this mass surveillance, all this crackdown on freedom of speech. And I think I always just wonder, are they thinking about, if you're that fearful of a Trump presidency again, these tools are going to be in the hands of whatever administration is in power. And that just boggles my mind. I don't know.
Yeah. I am the one who ran as a Democrat. I will say, I am an executive board member of Thurston County Democrats, a state committee member. I took that position knowing that I would be able to vote in line with not only my beliefs, but the beliefs of the community, which was actually to an advantage because I was able to advocate for and vote for all three ceasefire resolutions that Washington State Democrats did pass at the 2024 convention. So there was a reason that I ran as Democrat, as well as, yeah, in Washington State, we had this, I don't believe he's elected right now, Matt Shea, who had like this whole manifesto. And at one point in time on the eastern side of Washington, they tried to kidnap the sheriff when they didn't like the election results and stuff. And then when the election results last time, when people tried to knock down DC, our governor actually did have to go into a bunker because people were not happy about the election results with Trump. So yeah, Washington State likes to pretend that it's this very like progressive and forward place, and it's not. I even myself had to get a restraining order against someone who calls himself pro-whiteness, ultra MAGA Trump patriot. And even with me having a restraining order against him, there's only so much I can do because I'm running for office. Essentially, his racism is allowed. So they, yeah, there's a lot of ridiculousness that happens here. And the Democrats use it happening to their advantage, especially in Washington State, to make it seem like they have to vote for a Democrat no matter what, no matter who it is, while also limiting the information that people have about who's actually running.
Wow. I have a question, actually. I was helping someone trying to reach someone who had the delegate list, which of course is under lock and key. But we were really trying to reach out to the people in the uncommitted movement, the delegates there. I think there are like 30 of them. But do you know, just to get too off topic here, but do you know if they are going to, do they seem like they're going to fold? What's happening with that? Do you know?
Oh, no folding. But what I can say, one moment, because this can't say, that sounds a little weird. I can provide you the email later for someone from the uncommitted movement directly, and you guys can speak with them. I think this would be a great opportunity to provide them a platform as well, at least from Uncommitted Washington, and then they can collaborate with the national as well.
Okay, cool. So anyone else, please jump in. Thoughts on any of this? I'm going to pull up the indictment. I guess we can do that, the Uhuru, but anyone?
I'll fill the void, right?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
There's a lot of talk about there can't be any political violence, but those who speak it are the ones that are doing it. So it just baffles me that they can lie through their teeth like that all the time. I do believe there should not be any political violence. It should all be an exchange of ideas, and the best idea wins. We're also in a period of intense emotion in terms of talking about governance, and that just doesn't work. Emotional decisions in your personal life don't work. Emotional decisions when you're governing the lives of 332 million people just doesn't work. So somehow we've got to back off, talk from a rational standpoint, and actually talk about the ideas instead of emotions or all the little political hit jobs that are going on. So that's my hope.
Well, I have a question then. How is it that, and I agree with Mike, how is it that people who in every other aspect of their lives are making rational decisions get so inflamed and irrational about politics? I know what my answer to that question is, but I'd like to know what you guys think. Why is it different in politics than it seems to be in people's professional decisions about their families, etc.?
John, you're gonna make a comment. I'm not sure if it touches on what Phil and Mike are asking.
Yeah, I think it goes back to kind of what I was saying earlier, is that people allow themselves to play to the fear of the alternative. And so if you're able to stoke up that fear to such a high degree, and you believe that, this alternative is a fascist or a Marxist, or they're gonna, like in Washington, a common attack is he's gonna allow men into your little girls' bathrooms, and they use these ridiculous little attack lines that for a certain number of people it works, and it's effective. How productive is it? It's not. But until you can figure out a way to move beyond that, goading people into something by eliciting their, worst fears and then just magnifying those, people are always going to vote according to what they fear worst, or against what they fear worst, if that makes sense.
Right. And John, I'll just say, John, we've had 50, 60 candidates on, Kelly, right?
I think we're up to like 55, maybe over.
Okay.
I'll have
I was gonna say, by far, John, you've got the best background we've had of a candidate so far. But yeah, the points you're all getting at tie into this idea of suppression of speech, right? Because how do you justify it? You justify it by saying these people need to be silenced because they're dangerous, right? So, Doug, Joe, your thoughts on any of this?
I definitely err on the side of free speech and allowing speech and ideas to be expressed, and I don't agree with state intervention and state suppression of speech. And yeah, I do find it pretty disturbing where we see it cropping up with the TikTok ban. I think is maybe the most aggressive assault and high level assault on speech and the spread of different messages and communications in society. It seems pretty clear that they were not able to control the narrative on that platform in the same way that they were able to control the narrative on US-based platforms where they had already established inroads, as the Twitter files revealed. And so, yeah, there's definitely a big paradigm shift underway on the control of information and communications in society and surveillance. And yeah, we should be fighting and looking for every opportunity to fight against it.
Yeah, I really. Oh, Joe, no, please go ahead, Joe.
Well, so our manner of legislating has been hijacked by special interest dominance. That's the bottom line. And these are the folks who will vote to legalize corruption so that the corrupt interests or the corporate interests have leverage to invest millions to generate whatever favorable legislation they want. Meanwhile, make sure the little guy and the independent and the middle class and the lower class and the homeless who can't even be legally outside anymore, make sure they get nothing. That's exactly it is overwhelming. And fortunately, there are those 55 who appeared on this program who are chipping away, and that's what we have to keep doing, because the people are out there that want to listen. Like when I go door to door for the Kennedy campaign right now, we go to doors of people that don't traditionally vote in the primaries and that don't, go and vote maybe once every 4 years, and they're really astounded someone even came to bother with them, because they're not on anybody's radar. So hopefully we can make some noise this year with the incremental steps that it takes, citizens taking action.
Yeah, I absolutely say it every time. I believe those are the people that can tip. And when you've only got less than 40% turnout, and these are the results, imagine if you can get more out. And I know you guys did this with like very little money. So on the TikTok note, I want to play this clip. We played it once before, but it's very telling about TikTok. And that's something actually I've got to dig back into. There's so many stories, but I don't know what the latest is on that of who. I know they were saying, oh, it's going to be fine if it's sold to, was it Mnuchin? I don't know what has happened. I do know that there is already censorship on TikTok. It's a lot less bad than anywhere else, but I've experienced it myself. So, but here's this clip on, this is Romney and Blinken talking about TikTok.
I mean, typically the Israelis are good at PR. What's happened here? How have they and we been so ineffective at communicating the realities there? And
we're on an intravenous feed of information with new impulses, inputs every millisecond. And of course, the way this is played out on social media has dominated the narrative. And you have a social media ecosystem environment in which context, history, facts get lost, and the emotion, the impact of images dominates. And we can't discount that. But I think it also has a very, very, very challenging effect on the narrative.
Yeah, a small parenthetical point, which is some wonder why there was such overwhelming support for us to shut down potentially TikTok or other entities of that nature. If you look at the postings on TikTok and the number of mentions of Palestinians relative to other social media sites, it's overwhelmingly so among TikTok broadcasts. So I'd note that's of real interest, and the president will get the chance to make action in that regard.
That's a clip that doesn't need a setup. So anyone who wants to jump in on that, please do.
Oh my. You can totally see what they're talking about being history, facts, and Blinken calls it the narrative is their narrative, which is the narrative that they've created to maintain control of voters and donors in the United States. It's not a true narrative. And the reason TikTok is so popular and why it has so many mentions of Palestinians is because that's the only option, right? That's the only place you can find it. So relative to mentions on state-controlled social media or state-censored social media, of course there's going to be more mention of Palestinians and that crisis and many others on TikTok than there are on other platforms. That's so they approach it with this overwhelming idea that they're promoting, this propaganda that their narrative is based on facts and history, when in fact we know that these two parties and the people behind them have written history because they've been the victors and write it how they want and have distorted history for centuries, but at least here for decades.
Can anybody on the call speak to the discourse on TikTok about Venezuela right now? Because I know on PBS NewsHour, I caught a very slanted piece calling the recent elections completely illegitimate and calling the U.S.-backed coup efforts the true spirit of democracy in the country, which I thought was pretty breathtaking. How all of the establishment media was all lined up with the State Department talking points, even though I dug deep and managed to find neutral election observers that seem to legitimate the latest results from Venezuelan elections. So I wonder, does anybody know what's the latest on TikTok about Venezuela?
I don't know specifically that. I do know that I think it was something to do with the Carter Center, and also I had no idea the National Lawyers Guild did this, but they went down there and observed as well. I don't know the nitty gritty details about it, but they said it was legitimate. Like they didn't see problems. Now, another side thing I do is I work with Audit Elections USA, and they're actually Democrat run, but so it was long before before 2020. But covering election integrity, election security stuff is really, really down in the weeds, very dry. I mean, learning all the machines and risk limiting audits and all that. So I find it a little bit it didn't go into any detail to tell me like what exactly did they see. They sort of mentioned there weren't long lines and stuff like that, but I don't know as far as I don't know what machines they're using. They used to be using Smartmatic, and now they're not. I don't know why that changed, but it's like anything, like all these stories, you have to spend how does the average person that's not a journalist know what to trust? All of this stuff is it takes a week for each story to figure out what's going on. So I think that's thankfully we do have independent media, but I'm noticing we just had the end of July where we weren't able to live stream to this platform all of a sudden. I didn't know I had to have a blue check, but now since I have a blue check, I am experiencing worse. I tried to post about the Washington primary, about Jason Call and both you, Desiree and John, and it just blocked me posting that all day long. I had a link to an independent voter network article, and it just blocked me. So finally I took a screenshot of that and just posted that. But it's things like that.
It for you.
Thank you. Well, I mean, it's things like that I think are just set up it's just aggravating. Twitter now can't find when you go to type something, someone that you've communicated with 100 times, 500 times, whatever, you follow each other, it won't autofill it. It won't find it. And then just setting up all these roadblocks, I think it's just sort of like a slow burn on us to just give up. So I don't know what we do. I think you have to, if you just go off and go to Rumble or somewhere, then a whole other audience isn't going to see you. So I think the best thing to do is to try, everywhere on as many platforms as you can. And as candidates, like a great clip I had of you, Mike, and I think it was with Bo in New Jersey's Bo Forte, saying that, you've got to make your own media, but you also have to get out on foot and just talk to people. And it's they can't really control that yet, I guess.
So I want to just before my battery dies, and I may get cut off here in a minute, but I want to just say a couple things. So for the free speech thing, people need to understand that free speech can be ugly and mean, and it can be just some of the most worst thing that you've ever heard in your life, but free speech is free speech, and you don't have to like it. And when you start saying that you don't, the people that you don't like can't say whatever it is they're saying, then you're next, because what you're going to be wanting to say later, what the message that you're going to want to be getting out, that might not be welcome by the powers that be, and your voice is next, And so I think it's a real dangerous thing that we're well on our way down this path already, obviously, but we need to really turn it around. And for the Venezuela discussion, regardless of what might be going on down in Venezuela, I think we need to be talking about more, why is it our business meddling in whether or not their elections are free and fair or not? That's not it. When January 6th happened back in during that election, how would Americans feel about China coming into the U.S. and saying that they didn't think that election was fair, so they need to ensure that we're doing things right? It's like everybody needs to step back, it's not our job. It's not our job. It's not our business to ensure that an election is run the way that we think it should be run, because we've obviously got some ulterior motives, and we've got it a certain way that we'd like to see it go. So once you have that sort of a slant, you have no business trying to ensure somebody's running an election the way you see fit.
Right. And
Preach.
Desiree, when Kelly was talking, I could see you grinning and nodding along. So I'm sure you maybe have an anecdote to share.
Oh, you know what? It's just, I would have never run for office if I hadn't been homeless. Technically, when I registered to run for mayor of Olympia, I still lived at Pear Blossom Family Shelter. I say technically, there's nothing technical about it. I lived there. After doing that, I just ran for mayor to make a point, really, which was that they were not honest. And I got 5% of voters in the primaries. And that was with no donations, no endorsements. I was just running around doing like reading circles with families and talking to people about what was happening. I think realistically, when it comes to running for office, once you do it the first time, other people are going to come to you because they resonated with what you said, and they're going to ask you to run again, and they're going to ask you to run again, and they're going to ask you to run again. And there's so much that is intentional that they try to make sound unintentional, even with Democrats. I know, just with the overall like idea of corruption or the message not getting out there, or kind of really just, I was thinking about more so with what Phil had said about what I think is a contributing factor. I know for me, for example, there were times where I was invited to speak for endorsement and I was given the wrong date and time.
Yep.
And then when I would ask, did other candidates show up? And they would say, oh, well, just lucky for the other candidate that one of their staff members joined our group 2 months ago. So their staff member got to speak for them and no one got to speak for you. And it's a lot of that is behind the scenes. And it's unfortunate because so many people, I think, who are more leftist, who do have more care about community as a whole, find themselves going into more of the charity route, 501c. And, charity is really just something to kind of separate all of the issues and to keep people from collaborating together to tackle stuff as a community. So yeah, that was really long and drawn out, but ultimately, it's a little interweb underneath that they have full of. There was this video that I watched earlier today of this woman really dumbing down everything that's happening, and she was trying to criticize people who were saying they wouldn't just vote for Kamala without her, saying for a ceasefire. And the video was so pathetic because it was just turned into, oh, well, now people are going to have to start helping trans people, and now people have to help women looking for abortion access, and now people have to help women. And it's like, the truth is, it's not just now that those people need help. It's not just now that women and trans people and that children, and there's been entire communities of people who've needed help. And realistically, when you ignore all the down ballot votes, when you ignore all the issues, when you tell people to set something aside as big as what's happening in Palestine for your own rights, it really just perpetuates a system that makes it so people allow themselves to participate in politics the way they do. So yeah, it's all this funnel and this system and this aggrandization of what's happening at the upper level. Watching Kamala Harris try to girl boss her way out of not speaking to the humanity of what is happening to civilians in Palestine. It really is just mind-numbingly disgusting. So
right.
That's all I was thinking of.
Oh, I think his battery must have died, John. Yeah, I saw a video where, I mean, there was some people were yelling something about the ceasefire, and she just says something like, "Oh, well, then you get Trump." What can you do with that? I don't know. Mike, you look like you wanted to.
Yeah, we talk a lot about being influenced or railroaded. If you have a brain and the ability to do research, I don't see how any of that, those mastications and that huge system work. I'm trying to figure out how to arrest inflation, and I'm not listening to anybody on TV. I'm actually reading a 700-page book to try and figure out the mechanics of the Federal Reserve System, so that when somebody asks me what I think was possible, I have something that's actually verifiable and it's informational. So again, we need to get out of the emotional business. We need to get into the rational. If you're going to step forward and affect the lives of fellow citizens, you need to do it in a rational manner. So that's it. I mean, that probably said too much right there.
Hey, let me add one thing about, of course, Project 2025 is getting a lot of action, but if you look deep into what they're doing, we can learn from that, and we can take a model that they're doing. See, when they went out and got 100 organizations to sign on for that, they didn't really care if the organizations were bought into all 900 pages. All they cared about was, what's your one issue? Oh, you're against gay people? Well, hey, we're your friend. Look. And so you sign them people up. Now we, as independents and Democrats and non-establishment folks, we need to form alliances. I'm actually part of the Alliance Party in South Carolina. So we do that. We go out and try to make alliances with everybody. Yeah, look, we may not align on 6 out of 10 issues. I know, Phil, you're libertarian, right? So, we may have a little different aspect of thinking what the government purpose is. But I'm with you on let's get rid of income tax, stuff like that. So we have overlapping things we can agree on. And that's sort of a model that we should probably grab and run with,
Absolutely.
And I was going to say, we're getting at the top of the hour. And before we get into a discussion on taxes and revenue, which will take us down a rabbit hole, let's begin to wrap up. So
before you do, though, Matt, I do want to say we talked another time, when I think it was Mike was on and Bo from New Jersey. I think we got touched on immigration and then healthcare, but I really do believe that there are those big overlaps between the Greens and Libertarians, and that we can have rational adult discussions that aren't all emotional. And no, the sides aren't going to agree on everything, but I think that is the biggest threat to the system. So anyway, okay.
Well, I think a lot of times too, we can rationally look at something like Mike was saying and understand and agree upon that there's a problem, and then we of course come to we have different opinions as to what's the solution, and that needs to be debated then in a rational manner, like Mike was saying. But we're at the top of the hour, so we're going to wrap up. And basically, if we can go around, and if you could all just reintroduce yourselves, how can people follow you, support you, as well as just a brief closing message. And Mike, you can go first, please.
All right, Mike Coles, Texas 13, so that's the Panhandle along the Red River. Website, colesforcongress.org. That's my main source of information, except for me going out and talking to the people. That's it. I got to make an imprint on by myself. So.
Phil?
I'm Phil Anderson. I'm running for U.S. Senate in Wisconsin, technically as an independent, but as has been pointed out, I am a libertarian. The overarching message that I get from participating on this in this group, and not just on the free speech issue, but obviously that's the most important one, is that none of us, regardless of party affiliation or positions on issues, have a voice right now, because the two-party system is held captive by the donor class, the military industrial complex, AIPAC, whoever. And to the extent that we can work together to talk about all of our messaging getting through, ballot access to debates, whatever that looks like in any particular state or district, we have to work together on that. Otherwise, the differences that we have will never have the possibility of being discussed in a way that can actually matter and actually contribute to good governance. It just won't matter unless we work together to a certain extent.
Okay, Doug.
Okay, Douglas P. Marsh, U.S. Senate candidate, Michigan. I thought it was really great what everyone had to say during this panel. But Desiree had a really great message of just using your real experience and real bridges out with your community as a starting point. And like, I think it was, I can't see everybody in the chat now, but Mike, I think, was saying to keep a rational and cool head discussing things when you're out there in your community. And like Joe said, key in on the issues that bring us all together. And Phil was kind of echoing that too, like just the diversity of this panel. We're everywhere spread out throughout the country. We're every kind of political affiliation, but we have so much common ground, and we don't have voice in the mainstream, but we have a common voice that we've all managed to share here. And I think, you know, building relationships at workplaces and with neighbors and sharing this message and these ideas and is kind of the way forward. And I hope we can all work together on that continuing.
Okay, Joe?
Well, my website is bettercandidates.org. And I give you credit, Desiree, for running. I don't know if you know about Pat LaMarche, who ran as the vice presidential candidate in 04 and stayed in homeless shelters all across the country. When I met with her in D.C., she was staying across the street from Dick Cheney's house with a sign, "Come sleep with me, Dick." So you got to have a sense of humor when we're doing this. We can't take ourselves too seriously. I have run 10 times, but really, I haven't run all those times. I've stood on the ballot, and standing is just as valuable as running. So some of us have a job to do, and we have to go to work every day, so we don't get to campaign every day. But the message that you, Desiree, got out there and said, look, we are doing this because others need to do this. And we have to keep recruiting others to step up and get on the ballot. 50% unopposed, it just can't continue like this. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Desiree?
Yeah, I appreciate the positive words. I will say too, what I think is really funny is all the people who vote for me tend to be the people that the Democrats want to vote. So I know in Washington State there's a push for things like ranked choice voting. I'm just plugging that here because I think that would be a great conversation to have with other candidates. But yeah, Tolliver for Congress, I guess, is still just where to go for anyone who wants to interact with me and see what happens going forward. I really do care about what is happening in Palestine, and I understand that there are a lot of issues that people feel like we can bend and we can lean and wane over. But I think the idea of a government dropping bombs that can clear 30 blocks on civilians is truly something that we shouldn't vote for or participate in. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, lastly, I want to plug the show that I worked on for 4 years, Live on the Fly with Randy Credico. Matt, you'll be on there tomorrow at 3 p.m., right? Do you want to you can go to WBAI.org, but who is it? You and Ray McGovern and Larry?
Yeah, myself, Ray McGovern, Larry Johnson, and Randy, and we'll be talking about the military-industrial complex, Smedley Butler, and of course, probably talking about what's going on with these kinds of things: free speech, Fourth Amendment, Scott Ritter, Tulsi Gabbard, the Hers, all these things that we've been talking about tonight.
Okay, thank you all so much for coming. It was great to meet you.
Yeah, thank you all.
Right.